proud alum of our Newton Public School system and a longtime community member. I'm so glad to see so many people here. It really shows the investment that you're willing to come out and hear the presentation tonight for our schools. This has been a process that's been going on since November. We've had, I think, 5 meetings now in looking at the assessments that Schreiber, Architectural, and Gravity Works have provided for us. It has been a process, very strategic, and thanks to RSP, they have given us a really great roadmap to get to where we're going with this. So we're just happy to have you all here tonight to help us with this process. And we're looking forward to the conversations and the journey ahead for us. So again, thank you for being here.
Okay, as this work got started, it was with the intention of making sure that we're going to meet the needs of our school community, not just now, but also into the future in a fiscally responsible manner. I know that everybody wants that. And that goes back to utilizing data. Tonight is going to be one of those times where we actually get your perception from a data perspective. Those will serve as data points for us. The RSP group that Chief talked about, the facilities group, has done a lot of work up to this point in time to kind of develop some objectives and then some potential priorities that we're going to have you rank. Ginna is going to do a lot better job of explaining that than I am, but it's really important that you understand if you came here tonight wanting to say, okay, what are they going to ask for in a bond? That's what I want to know. You're not going to walk out of here with that information, okay? This is like part of that preliminary time where we're trying to figure out what it is we need. We need your input based upon the work done thus far for us to prioritize that so that when we do come back with that potential question, it be at about March of next year or August or November, you will be real defined about the direction we want to go. Some of the times I think that school districts, they jump into a bond project and they don't have a good enough idea of what the community thinks they need before they pull that trigger to go down that road. We don't want to do that, all right? And I'll kind of point back to what we tried to do with the Santa Fe project. We were very direct about what we were looking for. I know that was an acute issue, but we really tried to get a lot of community input about what did you want us to do. And there was a lot of time spent trying to make sure that we were doing the right things for them, okay? So it's really important to understand. We also, Melissa alluded to, we had Gravity Works that did a facilities assessment, and that physical facilities assessment, the goal of that was to see what our facilities conditions are right now, and essentially if we were going to take and just remodel those as they currently are to extend the life of those, what would it cost? So that was presented in final form on Monday. That's going to be accessible to the general public here really quickly. All of my staff are going to get it over the course of this weekend. We're going to make sure it's put in board docs where our Board of Education stuff is housed so you all can see that as well. So what you won't see there either is, hey, what does it cost to build a new this? What does it cost to build a new that? That wasn't the purview of that group. The purview of that group was to see, okay, if we want to just take and make sure our facilities that we currently have are in good enough condition to extend their life, another life cycle, because if you think about it, the new high school was built when? In the 70s, right? Like 71 or 72, right? The last bond was passed, I believe, in 2008. Okay, was everything addressed in 2008 that needs to be? We're replacing right now pneumatic controls in the high school from 1972 for the HVAC systems. Folks, they don't do pneumatic controls anymore. That kind of stuff. So when you think about that, we just want to make sure we can ensure we can extend the life of the facilities that we have that are very functional and also meet the needs of some of those areas that are not functional enough for us. You probably have heard several times things like the culinary arts. It's a great 1970s home economics kitchen. It is not a nice 2025 culinary arts kitchen. And that kind of stuff. Our science classrooms up at the high school, the pods over here. So in that facilities assessment, you'll see some information about what would it cost to upgrade those, but really all of the information is attributed to what are we going to do, or what would it cost to get it to where we're extending the current life of our facilities now. And I want to speak to this a little bit too. I've heard since I got here, Deferred maintenance, deferred maintenance, deferred maintenance, right? We just didn't take care of the stuff that we had when we had it. Don't agree with that. I'll guarantee you, previous boards of education, just like this Board of Education now, and future boards did the best they could at the time that they were involved in those particular school bond projects or just keeping schools going as they were. You know, so we have exterior envelope issues we've got to address. We've got roofing issues that we've got to address. All of you have roofing issues at home you have to address. You can't do that every 40 years. Okay, sometimes you got to do it. You got to attend to that a little bit more. So those are some of the things that, as you look at the facilities assessment, might be interesting to you. And I say this a lot too. We're not looking for a Cadillac if we come to you with a bond. We just don't want to drive a Pinto anymore, right? And for those of you old enough to know what a Pinto was, if you can't remember that, you've heard the word pacer, right? Some of you are old enough to remember that either, right? So it's not that like there will be anything from an extravagance perspective. It's a little bit like with Santa Fe. We wanted to make that to where it was very usable for kids, and folks, you came out, you voted for that, and it is a great space for those kids and those teachers. It really, really is. So this work is just all being put in place to make sure we get what the community says they want, and we can prioritize that in a way that's fiscally responsible and meet the needs of our kids, because we're just placeholders. We're just placeholders. This current board is, I am, all of you are here as placeholders. It's building for the future of our school community. So I'll turn it over to Ginna and Todd, and they can take it from there.
All right. Thank you, Fred and Melissa, for the welcome. Hello, everybody. My name is Ginna Wallace with RSP. With myself.
Need a driver?
I might need a driver. Okay. Okay, so for tonight, the agenda that we're going to talk through today, we've already started out with our welcome. The next 20 to 30 minutes, Todd and I are going to speak to a couple of main foundational items before we break out into an open house. And so I really encourage everyone, if you're standing back there, come and take a seat. We're going to speak pretty briefly just about the process in general, the foundational piece of data that built towards the conversations with the committee, and then an update of the committee progress where they're at right now, where we break out into small group discussion and then feeding that input into the electronic survey. So a little bit about RSP. We are based out of Kansas City. We work as a firm solely with school districts. And so we specialize in enrollment planning and facility planning. So my name is Ginna Wallace, education planner, and I've got Todd White with me, retired superintendent. We've been facilitating the committee over these past few months, as well as providing the enrollment forecast and capacity utilization report for the school district. So now I'm going to turn it over to Todd to talk through the overall process of our facility master plan.
Thanks, Jenna. Good evening, everybody. I'm going to apologize up front for my voice. The pollen has got to me. And I'm hoping that you can avoid it. Is it working now? All right. Fred did a great job of talking to you about essentially what this process is not. This is not a process just to build a bond. What this is a facility master plan to really look at your future and to get a lot of perspectives on that particular future. So I want you to, right now, if you are on the committee, would you just raise your hand? I know that we have lots of people here that are on the committee, kind of scattered around here this evening. But we've got a group of about 20 to 25 folks that have been at this works, as Melissa said, since the fall, meeting and looking at a whole variety of data. And so what I want to do is to share with you that process that we've gone through. So we've looked at enrollment trends. We have looked at building utilization. We went into every building that you have, talk to staff about how that particular building is being used. We know from a floor plan that you have X number of classrooms and you have this, that, and the other. What we really need to know is, where is your special ed classrooms? Where is the art room? How is each and every one of these spaces being utilized so that we can give a fulsome understanding about the space and the requirements that you currently have to offer the education for your kids. Facility conditions, as Fred mentioned, Gravity Works and Schaefer did a great job of providing the committee with an extensive look at your current facilities. And again, how they're utilized and the condition they're in forms a really good understanding of where you are currently and what are some of the opportunities and obstacles as we move forward. We also certainly marry that with the student success measures, academic performance of your student body. Board administration and the committee input, they've been critical in this process. And we've looked at the use of facilities, preferred building utilization. What that means is this is how you're using it, but if we could, we would use it this way to enhance programs, the ease of students moving in and out of certain spaces, those sorts of things. We also looked at ideal school size. How big is too big? How small is too small? What is the functional basis of ensuring that you can operate it at optimal capacity, but also effectively and efficiently? When you marry those things together, you have what we refer to as the trifecta of an ideal school size. And so we talked about that in our committee meetings as well. Student programming, you'll hear a little bit more about that this evening, and obviously we'll take your input on those sorts of things as we look at it. The student program is essentially, what are we offering students? What are we not offering students that we wish we could? And so you'll have an opportunity to speak into that. We also understand that we're doing this where we know that the community values its schools. I mean, it means something to be a Raider, right? To wear the black and the gold and those sorts of things. And so this was also done with an understanding from committee people of what it means to be here and live here and be a part of this community, but also being a graduate, as Melissa said, and we have many of those folks, I'm sure, in the audience here this evening. Our recommendations are going to come to the board on June 23rd, so in about a month and a half, in 3 areas. Program offerings, as I mentioned, what students have to take, articulation through pre-K through 12, and student experience. What is it like to be a student here? What is it like to be a Railer? And some of that pride that continues to be a part of your history, but certainly want to be a part of your future as well. And then coming down to your facility needs. Facility master plan is a process really meant to understand where you are, that you as a public speak into that, and that it's really looking at a future focused opportunity for your community, for your schools, and most importantly, your kids. Okay, so we were given the charge by the Board of Education to do these sorts of things, work with our committee, look at the facility blueprint, attendance areas, ideal grade configurations, optimal facility utilization, those sorts of things. We actually looked at what would it look like if you arranged your schools in a different format, grade spans and the like. Okay, and we really kind of dove into that for a good period of time. Again, listening to the community and also the committee in terms of what they want. You'll see the evidence of that here this evening. Okay. The other thing that we do is we bring RSP with the amount of work that we've done throughout the Midwest, is that we have a process that really looks at your academic focus, that looks at your culture of your community and your school, who you are, who you want to be, that sort of Railer mentality, if you will. And then the economics of the whole thing. That doesn't suggest we're talking about dollars and cents, but it also means that we're looking at what are the economic trends that support all variety of things, offering cost-effective programs, looking at student enrollment trends, looking at building trends within your community, housing starts, et cetera, et cetera. We do this with a process that involves everybody. So we start with the students. We also certainly start with the Board of Education, the administration, the staff, a committee of your community, and certainly now the input of your community as we go forward. We marry this with the 3 goals that the Board of Education has for itself and for your community and students. A focus on core instruction, improve or sustain the culture, again, you'll hear that theme throughout, and then form partnerships and connections with our community stakeholders. So this is really kind of outlining the entire process that we've been through. So I mentioned the framework that we just looked at. We did quite a bit of data, and I think that the committee will attest to the fact that they had homework after every meeting, and we asked their opinion a lot about things in terms of how to lead and how to understand where they were headed in this, and so research was certainly a part of that, not only knowing yourself, but also what others are doing. Discovery, in terms of identifying the objectives that you'll see here in a second that Ginna will go over, is a part of what emerged in this process. We've investigated it, we've tested it in some ways. I mentioned the grade configuration. We tested, hey, what would it look like if you did this, that you articulated kids in this way, and then listened and responded appropriately to the input that we received. Tonight we're here with input, which is a critical component of this process. And then certainly the outcome will be delivered to the board on June the 23rd, but then far after that, the outcomes become a part of how you will activate the plan for your future in your school district and community. So here we are, scope of definition we've completed with our committee. We've done the foundation of data. Committee work is still in progress. As I said, we've got about 2 or 3 more meetings that we'll do. In progress is our public input here this evening. If a map and you are here, this is where we are this evening. And then blueprint for recommendations is the next thing that comes up. So Ginna's now going to come and talk to you a little bit about the data that's so integral to this particular process. So, Ginna?
Thank you, Todd. All right, everyone, so I'm going to go through the main foundation of data that the board and committee has already received. And so these 2 main parts that RSP provided was one, the enrollment analysis. What is happening with our student and our population that we can plan for over the next 5 years. And then, like Todd mentioned, the capacity utilization analysis. How do our buildings currently operate? And what different opportunities do we have to utilize our buildings more efficiently and plan for better use of buildings for our student experience. And so the first piece here that I'll go through is our enrollment analysis. All the information that I'm about to share is really simplified. So this is a report that's, I think, 80 to 90 pages that I'm shrinking down to about 5. So if you have more questions about this piece, find me after. The full report has been presented to the board and is also accessible online. So to start here with our enrollment analysis, a little bit about the methodology to RSP. We are a social science firm that takes a collection of data from all different sources to push out the most likely forecast with the assurance of that 97 to 99% accuracy 5 years later. The way we do that is breaking down your district into small, bite-sized pieces that are all analyzed through the different data metrics. And so this first map that you'll see here, what we're showing here is instead of looking at all of the city of Newton as one entire community, we focus each green line on one planning area. It's like a neighborhood, a subdivision, an apartment complex, and so we know in every neighborhood of the district how many kids there are, what are the grade levels, what is the census forecasting for that area, if there's new housing, existing housing, very, very old housing, and then what is the forecast 5 years later for number of kids in that neighborhood. And so the model takes in all this information and based on the variables that are collected, pushes out the most likely forecast. And so some variables are greater indicators of growth and some variables are limitations of growth. And so we're collecting everything and analyzing that to push out what we think enrollment will most likely be 5 years later. And so some of these key variables we're looking at on this visual. The first one is looking at our live birth rate information. and the relationship of the regional live births to kindergarten students 5 years later. And so in Harvey County, we have been seeing a decreasing live birth rate, and this is going to be mothers who have their addresses in Harvey County, not where you physically give birth, but as the state and county code those different families having kiddos. And so we are seeing where we're at 10 years later, a decreasing number of live births, which does correlate with the top green line, which is the number of people under 5 years of age. And so that's one limitation where we are seeing a decreasing pool of potential students in the region. The second bar graph here is looking at your total enrollment the past 10 to 15 years. And so in this visual, you can see that the past 5 years, we have had seen decreasing enrollment. And so with our different grade levels, having larger grades in the high school and smaller grades in the elementary, we've decreased in enrollment the past 5 years. And so another limitation when we're thinking about the future of enrollment. The next piece that goes into the model is looking at the geography of students. And so I have 4 different maps here that try to piece together how we focus in on the household level. Your top left-hand corner is your total density heat map. How many kids and where do they live in the district, with the hottest red being the greatest proximity and density of students. And so we're looking at what is the relationship of those households, those neighborhoods, generating future kids? Where are our pockets of the most amount of students right now? If you go over to the next map, the green and orange one, we're looking at, okay, what has been changing the past 5 years in each neighborhood? And so where there's green, that specific neighborhood has decreased in count, while the orange has increased in count. So in every neighborhood of the district, some neighborhoods are increasing, so maybe new families are moving in, you're seeing a regeneration of students, versus in the green, there might be some aging in place, some empty nesters that are still living in their households that are actually decreasing what's happening at that neighborhood. The bottom left is looking at the relationship of students to housing units. And so the areas in red would be the neighborhoods that yield the most students per unit. We use this analysis to figure out how many potential students come from future developments and looking at which type of housing yields the most. So for example, apartment complexes that have studios or 1-bedroom units yield less students than a single family home less than $200,000. Okay, so there's some data that backs into why we think a certain household would be more student yielding or less student yielding. And then that last visual on the bottom right is looking at the growth areas. And so with meeting with the city and county, we put together where potential housing projects are happening and have around 800 housing units planned to be built over these next 10 years. And so we are factoring in the new housing that's coming online, where it's located, and then how does that correlate with our different projections. Okay, so that information kind of sets the stage, and we analyze all those variables to push out what our enrollment forecast is. And so this bar graph goes through the past 10 years of data and the forecasted next 5 years of data. And so we do have the district decreasing in enrollment these next 5 years. Most of the decrease is at the secondary level. So as larger grades in the high school graduate, the grades coming in are smaller, and so that creates more of a decreasing variable at the high school and middle school grades. Elementary, when you focus on just the red bars, is more of a stable to increasing enrollment over the next 5 years. It actually comes a little bit up in year 3 and then comes a little bit down 4 and 5, but more so illustrating that you have stable enrollment at that elementary level. So with the new housing coming in, as well as some other variables, we think elementary stabilizes, but the middle and high school grades decrease these next 5 years. And so that kind of went through a very quick overview of all the enrollment data. And like I said in the beginning, there's a whole lot more that goes into it, But just to give you a sense of what numbers we're using and what numbers the committee has been using these past few months. The next piece of data foundation that RSP provided was a capacity utilization analysis. So this process here started in November, where we gathered all the information from the building principals, so the floor plans, the schedules, and then a team of RSP members toured every single building with the building principal to map out how each space is used in each facility. At that point, we collect all that data and analyze it with the class size guidelines, the schedule and the times of different sections are being used to produce what a functional capacity is of a building. So what's a functional capacity? I think these two visuals really try to summarize it up. So that top visual that's yellow would be saying what is typically used as an occupant capacity or an architecture capacity. So saying if you just looked at every room as a room and assumed 25 kids per room, you would have this number of capacity. Those of you that work in buildings, and especially at the elementary level, know that's not how it actually works. You have some rooms that are art, some rooms that are music that aren't used all times of the day. You have some SPED rooms and ELL rooms that use less students. And so in this case, by going through that functional capacity process, we were able to take what is an occupant capacity to a more realistic number. And so that difference here in this visual of a 258 building versus a 176 building. And to more accurately talk about, okay, how many kids, where are they getting their programming, and know that in future planning decisions, we have the right spaces accounted for in each building. And so the ELL, the SPED, the art, and the music, they will always have a space that's designated to those programming needs. And what you're gonna see on the posters at your tables is a similar floor plan. That's that blue, pink, and orange print. That is the results of every single building's functional capacity analysis and what the capacity is, what's the projected enrollment, and the utilization. And so to kind of wrap all this up of our piece for that data foundation is on this table here. And so we have what each building is looking at, what the functional capacity results are, the past 3 years of student data, and the forecasted next 5 years of student data. Where we have the orange shading you'll see for Cooper is the facility that is overutilizing their functional capacity space. And so their attend enrollment exceeds the functional capacity of the building. And so that likely means there's some challenges with how that building is operating. And we'll talk about that when we get into the posters of some different ways to address that. But beyond Cooper, we do have the adequate utilization of all our spaces. So elementary, Santa Fe, the middle school and high school are all projected to utilize around 70 to 90% of their functional capacity over these next 5 years. Okay, so that was kind of the data foundation here. What we're gonna move into now is just briefly talk about how has the committee taken all this information, and then move into the recommendations and draft strategies that you all are gonna give your input on. So the process here started back in November. We have had 5 committee meetings, 2 board meetings, and you can see where the different checklists of where we're at right now with public input, and then moving into a final committee meeting. Our meeting summary, so we started with meeting 1 with kind of a data dump in some ways. The committee really had a very extensive time to go through the enrollment forecast, and then we brainstormed some different thoughts about where we wanted the district to be in those 3 buckets of program offerings, facility needs, and student experience. Meeting 2, we started to peel back what they thought about those 3 levers and draft belief statements. So in most of our processes like this, we always start the committee with formulating a belief statement in these 3 buckets, because it sets the stage of where the district wants to go, kind of before the hard work comes in. And so we can get everyone to agree on a set of values that is unique to your district alone. We can then compare how our different objectives and strategies fit within that belief statement. And so meetings 2, 3, and 4 really was spent the time fine-tuning those word texts, really illustrating, well, what do we want to say as our belief as this committee group? And by meeting 4, we had that 100% committee agreement with those 3 statements. During also that time of meetings 2, 3, and 4, the committee looked at grade configuration options. They looked at facility needs and what is currently offered in our programming lens, to then kind of wrap all that together to last meeting 5, where we trialed our different materials out that you guys are going to see in a couple minutes of potential objectives and strategies to meet these belief statements. Okay, so these next 3 pages are your most important pages of the whole night. This information is going to be what's exactly on the posters, and they go through the different committee progress and results of our process so far. So this first bucket, program offerings, the committee here outlined this belief statement, which talks about the students having a strong foundation in a variety of program offerings, and then they will continue to have access to academics, athletics, CTE, post-secondary skills training, so a very robust belief in how we should provide programs to our students. Under this belief statement, with all that information that I've talked about, we've outlined 3 core objectives. Objective 1, looking at to explore expanded elective class offerings for students in all grades. Objective 2, for the district to support greater pride throughout the community and promote program offerings. And objective 3, for the district to foster greater CTE and academic alignment. So under each of these objectives, we have some potential strategies. The strategies are the things that will make the district able to move towards completing that objective and aligning with the belief of the committee. All of these potential strategies are things that we're trying to get your input on tonight. And so reading through those different potential strategies and how do you all think they align with the objective, as well as prioritize them within each bubble, is going to be your input that we're focused on. I think it goes without saying a little bit that all of these potential strategies have a future dollar amount assigned to them. We're not at the point where we can say exactly what each of that fiscal impact would be. First, what we're trying to gather is, in theory, which do you rank as more important, which do you rank as least important underneath each of these objectives. And so we also have the same thing for student experience. So in this case, the committee mapped out the belief statement of fostering growth and community pride, striving to maintain smaller class sizes in primary grades, embracing students as they grow, and providing supportive, inclusive environments. And so underneath that belief statement, the 3 objectives, number 1 being the district to maintain the grade levels and balance enrollment between buildings. Objective 2, looking at the district to upgrade and maintain our outdoor amenities for the student experience. And then objective 3, the district to consider enhancements to our different athletic facilities to achieve our different student experience beliefs. And so similar, you have some different strategies to achieve those objectives under each core area. And we're going to be asking you all to rate that in the survey as well as the small group discussion. And then lastly here, for our facility needs, we mapped out the statement that all students will have access to facilities that support their academic and personal growth today and tomorrow. So the first objective under that statement we'll be looking at for the district to expand safety, accessibility, and security at facilities. Objective 2, for the district to consider ways to maximize use of all of our facility space. And then objective 3, for the district to consider strategic facility improvements that enhance student learning. Okay, so that goes through our report. What we're gonna do now is just, everyone can get up, if you want, walk around. All of the posters have that same information, and we are here to answer your questions, take in your input, and then kind of move you into taking the survey for that official results. The survey is going to be accessible for the next 2 weeks, and so if you guys take it today, share it on your Facebook, try to spread the word. We're trying to gain as much input as we can in this 2-week window. So with that, we're going to go ahead and break out. Committee members, if you're out there, just kind of spread out around the room and try to take any notes that you can so we can talk about it next meeting.